The day will come when my body will lie upon a white sheet, neatly tucked under four corners of a mattress, located in a hospital busily occupied with the living and the dying. At a certain moment, a doctor will determine that my brain has ceased to function, and that for all intents and purposes, my life has stopped. When that happens, please do not attempt to instill artificial life into my body by the use of a machine. And don't call this my deathbed. Rather, let it be called the bed of life, and let my body be taken from it to help others lead fuller lives. Give my sight to the man who's never seen a sunrise, a baby's face, or love in the eyes of a woman. Give my heart to a person whose own heart has caused nothing but endless days of pain. Give my blood to the teenager who was pulled from the wreckage of his car, so that he too might live to see his grandchildren play. Give my kidneys to one who has to depend on a machine to exist from week to week. Take my bones, every muscle, every fiber and nerve in my body, and find a way to make a crippled child walk. Explore every corner of my brain. Take my cells, if necessary, and let them grow so that someday a speechless boy will shout at the crack of a bat, and a deaf girl will hear the sound of rain against her window. Then burn what is left of me and scatter the ashes to the winds to help the flowers grow. If you must bury something, let it be my faults, my weaknesses, and all prejudice against my fellow man. Give my sins to the devil, but give my soul to God. Then, if by chance you wish to remember me, do it with a kind deed or word to someone who needs you. And if you do all I have asked, I will live. I will live forever.
On the run from Johnny Law. It ain't no trip to Cleveland.
Hello! Welcome back to an episode, a new one, a holiday episode of Doing It with Mike Sachs. We're going to go straight to a segment that's called To Be Explored Further, and I just called it that. I didn't even know that was called that until I just thought of it. To Be Explored Further. And I want to talk about subjects that intrigue me about comedy, subjects or facts that I think that they deserve to be looked into further. They just interest me. So in the last episode, I was discussing Wisconsin's connection to humor, whether it's the Zucker brothers of Airplane fame or the Great Onion, and what might have led Wisconsin in particular to become such an integral part of the comedic world. I really am not at all familiar with Wisconsin. I've never even been there, and I know very little about the Midwest. But this interests me, how Wisconsin came to be such an amazing place for comedy to launch, and a very specific type of comedy. And I hope to discuss this further with a Wisconsin comedy connection on a upcoming episode. For now, however, I like to talk about a subject that's very near and dear to me, and that's OCD and comedy. Let me say that again properly. OCD. See, I have to get it just right. There we go. That feels good. OCD, or obsessive compulsive disorder, is something that I have experienced since I was around 11, and it hit me very hard. There's been some talk about a connection between experiencing strep throat as a kid, and especially if you have it often, like I did, and then the onset of OCD symptoms, although I don't think there's been anything proven about that. I did suffer from strep throat as a child, and I can't remember any direct correlation between the two when it comes to timing, but if there is a connection between strep and OCD, I can see why my OCD began. I don't really know why. I don't know if anyone knows why it begins, but I do remember that it hit suddenly, very suddenly and with great force. I all of a sudden, as this 11-year-old, had this great need to do various things in very specific ways to scratch the itches I felt in my brain. Specifically, I had to flick on and off lights a certain amount of times. I actually once got in trouble in school for that. I was putting on the light in my overhead desk, on and off, on and off, and on and off. And this was really just for OCD reasons, not to waste electricity, which is what the teacher thought I was doing. But of course, at that age, I didn't know how to explain it. I also had bedtime rituals where I had to kick certain things a certain amount of times, typically 3, as that was my magic OCD number and still is. I had to check the closets in a certain way and all of that. Now, the OCD really became bad whenever I was out of my element. When I went out with friends, when I went into DC, when I went to Baltimore, up to Baltimore, but it was especially terrible when I traveled, and that still holds true to this day. It just increases and becomes that much worse. There was a fear of getting sick before and during trips, and my tics would and still do go into overdrive. Amazingly, or perhaps not so amazingly, my parents had absolutely no idea that I was suffering from this. I did not tell them. I was ashamed of it, and incredibly, they didn't notice because I was ticking like a madman. Quite frankly, it was a lot to live with as an 11-year-old, or any age for that matter, especially pre-internet. I honestly thought I was fucking insane and I was going crazy, and that terrified me. I have spoken with friends who suffer from OCD, and they remember thinking the same thing, that they were alone, that they were going crazy. And those who are now suffering from it, especially kids who feel like they can't talk with anyone about this, the advantage now is that they can self-diagnose and at least see that there are other like-minded people out there, a lot of people who suffer from this. They don't have to feel alone, and I think that's very important, and that did not exist when I was a kid. Now, to bring me back to my original point, OCD and comedy, I've thought about this quite a bit over these past 20 years or so, and I do think that there's a strong connection between having OCD and being in comedy. Not just into comedy, but into it as a field, as a profession. I'm not sure why, but I do know from the experience of interviewing a lot of comedy writers, and I'm talking 60 to 70, 80, and also some comedic performers, OCD is prevalent in, I would say, at least 70% of the people I talk with, and that is a conservative estimate. I once asked Dr. Oliver Sacks, no relation with me, about this, and he said he had not heard of any direct connection between OCD and comedy, but just through my own experiences, because I suffer from it and tend to ask questions about it to those I'm talking to and interviewing, which others might not, I have seen a very strong link between the two. Now, these are just guesses from my standpoint, but I think, and again, this is just my own opinion, that there are maybe one of two reasons for why this connection might exist. One, I think that OCD might rewire the brain in such a way as to make sufferers think differently than those who don't suffer from it. And this is a tremendous burden as a kid, but as an adult and as a comedy writer, it is vital to think differently. You have to. And to be really great, you have to think differently from those who are already thinking differently. So it's 2 generations, 2 layers removed from normalcy. I have no idea what chemically happens when one has OCD or what parts of the brain light up more than other parts, but I do think that some of the best ideas tend to come from those who experience mental illness, and not just OCD, but as comedy writers, you'll find anxiety, depression, OCD, all sort of playing a part in the production process. And I guess, too, this could go for philosophers, poets, scientists, artists, whomever. So what I'm saying is, even though I don't know what happens, I feel that my brain felt like it broke. And I think something flips at the onset of OCD that can cause obsessive thoughts and tics and depression and anxiety. And that the byproduct of this is somehow an ability to create in ways that others cannot. I'm not saying it's a better type of thinking, but I am saying it is a different type of thinking from the norm. So that's the first potential reason. The other reason is maybe simpler, and that's that all types of people in all professions might suffer from OCD, not just comedy writers. But you don't hear about it from your plumbers or your cashiers or your electricians or your surgeons or whomever. We do tend to hear about it from people who write and who talk about their lives up on stage, and people who use OCD, use their anxiety, use their depression in their comedic bits. Which leads me to my next point, that even if many people across many professions do suffer from OCD, and not just those in comedy and writing, I think that is a particular advantage to having OCD if you create comedy, that it is beneficial. OCD, at least to me, is an energy. It's a force. And your brain is constantly telling you what to do, how to do it, when to do it. It's always on, never ceasing. It's almost like the ticker at the bottom of a CNN broadcast. It's just endless. So it is an energy, at least for me, and it's not always a good energy. I say this out of experience. I followed that energy for a very long time in very unhealthy ways. I circled the drain for years and years. But what I learned eventually, through just teaching myself this, I guess, because no one else did, is that you can use this energy in a positive way. And that way for me was and is to write, to think of ideas, to try not to circle the drain by isolating myself from the world, to not drink away the problems, not to wash my hands 100 times a day, but to use that energy to create, to actually be uncomfortable not creating, to not be able to go a day without producing something. That has become my OCD obsession. Now, it's not the easiest way to live, but I can tell you that it's a lot better than the alternative, and you get a lot more done. You know, people have asked me, do you really write every day of the year, 365 days? And the answer is yes, and it's really because I have to. I am a flaming mess if I don't. Again, not the easiest way to live, but what's the alternative? Well, the alternative is not good. So as I said previously, about 70% of the comedy writers I've interviewed and know tend to suffer from OCD, as well as, of course, depression, in which there is a proven strong link between depression and comedy. And it's a subject that fascinates me, and I intend to look into all this further. It's also new, and I think that so much will come out in the future about it, which I find very exciting. And I want to say this, the kids who suffer from OCD these days do not have to do it alone. And the adults who suffer from it can know that OCD can be used as a tool in an effective, positive way, and to not be ashamed about it. And for that alone, I think that's fantastic. And I'm going to ask you, if you do happen to suffer from OCD and you are willing to talk about it, and especially if you're in the comedy world, could you contact me? If you're comfortable doing so, I was thinking maybe we could talk about it on a future episode. I think it would be interesting. My email is mikebsacks@gmail.com. Email me. I won't use your name unless you want me to, and we can go all in on OCD. Okay, so for our holiday episode this month, we're going to go now to a very informal call I had with my producer, Rob Schulte, about the past year on the podcast, a sort of roundup of what worked on the podcast, what didn't work, and what we intend to bring you in 2024. I can tell you it's going to be a great year. There's going to be a ton of exciting interviews and bits planned, and I cannot wait for you to hear it all. So let's go now to my conversation with my producer extraordinaire, Rob Schulte.
Hey, Mike, are you on the call?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, great. I'm sorry that it took so long. I usually think that, these things, we've been podcasting for a while now. I don't know why these links keep messing up, but I always think it's a good idea at the end of the year to kind of do a post-mortem on like the progress of the podcast. And I know you want it to be the best it can be. So I figure we could look through like some demographics, some episodes that did better than others, and it can kind of inform what we want to do next year going into 2024 for Doing It with Mike Sachs. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Oh, great. And I do want to start this meeting off with a compliment. Like, you've always been so great to work with, and you appreciate all of the advice I get, and I appreciate you taking the time to do this meeting.
All right, well, can we stop for a second? I wanted to jump back for a little bit. I wanted to ask you about some of the things that I had requested that we do when we first came back on the air. That was me sending you to various Comic-Cons with you dressed as an inappropriate character, and then you could record whether it was a racist character or something that wouldn't fly these days, and then you could then record audience reactions to that.
Do you think that, if we really think about it, I don't know how much that would help the numbers, and it would put me in more of a predicament than you, but it would definitely reflect on you as well. So I don't think the audience reaction is great. Now, I think there's a way we could retool that idea for your TikTok, but I don't think we should rely on like the inappropriateness of it. I think we could still say something like off the wall in your classic brand of humor.
No, it's not inappropriate. It would be like the pimp character in Taxi Driver or Mickey Rooney's character in Breakfast at Tiffany's. You would dress as his characters that obviously wouldn't fly these days at these Comic-Cons, but you would see people's reactions to you. Now, as far as it being more on me, I'd be paying for you to fly out to these places, so it wouldn't be like I'd be totally...
Yeah, but I just don't think it would reflect well on you. Like, when we do this for an episode, I don't think the reactions that I'm going to get are going to bode well for, like, download numbers and ad sales and listenership, quite frankly.
Well, I think it would, especially if it causes some controversy.
Well, but what sort of controversy are you looking for? Because I think the days of all press is good press is over, don't you?
Well, I was thinking you could dress up, I'm forgetting the name of the movie, the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie with Sharon Stone. Do you remember that? Total Recall.
Oh, yes, of course.
Right. Do you remember the little who had 3 tits?
Well, I think you're conflating a couple of characters.
There was an alien who lived in someone's back. And then there was a who walked around. She was a female and she had 3 tits. That was the type of character I wanted you to do. So that
I think you're misremembering a little bit, quite frankly.
I'm not so sure about that. Can you look into that when we get off?
Yeah. We'll table it for now, but it can be an option for next year.
Okay.
But I do think, I was just at LA Comic-Con and Total Recall is still at the top of everyone's mind. So I like where your head's at there.
Yeah, I thought it might be still popular. The other idea I wanted to ask you about that I had brought up months ago was you following around Judd Apatow and, at various shoots and such. It wouldn't be when he was at home, but it would be when he was working and with a bullhorn just going after him, just criticizing.
I actually did try that one. I did. When that Pete Davidson movie was doing promo that he was all about, and it didn't go over well, but when I said I work for Mike Sachs through the bullhorn, he was like, yeah, I know that. Excuse me, Mike, but he said, I know that fucker.
Well,
he's written about me in his book.
Right. And that's the point of that thing. So I wanted to get a reaction. So did you tape that reaction?
I did tape it, but Judd's people, his handlers, broke my tape recorder.
Really? So that's a shame, because if you had gotten that, you didn't back that up to a cloud or something?
I couldn't. It was you had me bring in the old answering machine sized tape recorder. You said this is the highest quality, remember? I pushed back that there was no cloud. And I'm sorry. I'm not trying to get heated on you.
The technical
we
stuff.
did have this discussion.
The technical stuff, the logistical stuff's on your end. All right. I said from the beginning, if we're going to start this up again, I wanted to be the ideas guy.
You are the ideas guy, but like,
or well, if that's the case, then why? Then
making those?
Well, why would my bit, the other bit that I wanted you to do was that you walk naked into places of worship and then record that reaction? Why was that never done? Now I know that's a little ticklish as far as you getting caught, but
Mike, I've got body image issues. I can't.
Wait a second. That would be part of it, and so you go in there. And you would help yourself. You would also help the show with what people might say to you in either a mosque or a church or a synagogue. You don't have to stay there for the entire ceremony. You walk in, you get some reaction, you get the hell out.
Do you think at the current climate that maybe we should try and do that at like a Baptist church instead?
I don't really care what church it is. I just want reactions. Now, the other idea that I had written down that I had told you about, the mud wrestlers at the Renaissance Festival, like the frickin' frack type characters, for you to jump in there and start saying, I can beat both of you, and you take both of them on, and you record the reaction of the people in the Renaissance Fair. That hasn't been, or has it been done yet?
It hasn't been done, but what I will tell you is that is an idea I am a little bit more okay with. And when I was at LA Comic Con, I did talk to Honky Tonk Man, if you remember Honky Tonk Man from WWF, asking him if like his opinion on that idea. And he did, after a little bit of persuasion, say that he thought it could potentially get downloads. So I think we maybe we lead with that next year.
So you would do that, or would WWF guy do that?
No, he just said that he thinks I should do it too for the downloads. But of course, the next Renfest isn't until June or July, so we would need to plan it methodically.
So we missed the window.
Well,
all right.
Mike, do you want to? Can I tell you some of the demographics data that we've collected over the podcast, and then we can come back to some of your ideas?
Yeah.
It's kind of like Nielsen ratings. There's a lot of different areas, and I think you should know that the highest download demo that we're getting from are divorcee males.
Wow. Okay,
which is
I'm one of
interesting,
those. I'm a divorced men ale.
Yeah, but like they keep listening only about 7 minutes into every single episode and then repeating it. So I don't know.
It's like my ex-wife just listened to me for 7 minutes and then she turned me off.
It's weird though. I'm wondering why they're not why they're continually just listening to your intros, but never making it all the way through the episode.
What I have noticed, especially with Gen Z, the younger people,
that's next on my list, but yeah.
Well, they don't want to learn. And if I have advice for them that I want to give them, they tend to sort of tune it out. Have you noticed that? Does that come up on the statistics?
Well, it does feel like the Gen Z audience across the spectrum, doesn't matter any listenership, but that age group seems to jump around in the episode a lot. Like they'll listen for, a minute of your intro and then immediately skip like 20 minutes in to see what's happening there. And then they'll jump to the very end and then they'll jump back in the middle somewhere.
So how do we fix that?
I think maybe you need to be a little bit more engaging up top. Like some of these ideas you had are great for me, but I'm wondering if there's anything we can do for you. Like you could talk about getting into skateboarding, I think, and maybe all of the cool new music you're listening to on. Apparently the kids love Spotify and they're doing great things for artists right now. So you could really probably connect with them on that. And then have you heard of like shorts on YouTube and like short videos? I think you could do like prank videos.
Ooh,
and we could take those pranks.
Well, what was I just talking about?
Yeah, but I think you need to be the face of the prank.
Oh, I'm not going to do
it's
this
like,
shit. I'm married now and I have a daughter. Why would I run nude into a mosque?
But like, have you ever watched like Impractical Jokers? I think Gen Z loves that show where they like set up an elaborate thing and they're in like a in the van outside, controlling what happens over the prank.
Okay. So you'd want me to be like the host of a prank show.
Yeah. People love pranks, Mike.
All right.
And I think that, I mean, this is just me expressing, like, have you watched Matt Rife's latest Netflix comedy special?
No. I heard he's terrific. I haven't seen him. Okay.
Yeah. And I think you could really lean into that. Have you, when was the last time you sat down and did like some deadlifts and bench press?
Well, let me ask you this. Going back to that guy, this is the guy who started off the set with a joke about beating up a woman, right?
I think so, yeah.
Can we get him to come on the show and talk about that?
Yeah, and I think he also makes fun of disenfranchised people, which could potentially... I know I started off like not wanting to do bad press, but if I'm hearing you correctly, Mike, you don't matter. It doesn't matter to you what we're doing as long as like we can get the ad money from it.
I don't give a shit what we do. I just don't want to be involved, and I want the money for it, and I want the people listening.
Okay. Yeah, I can reach out to his agent as long as you can pay for my IMDb Pro account.
Sure. How much is that?
Then I can get their email. I think it's like $600 a year.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Well, you said you'd pay for things that were much more expensive than that. But
no, I said I would send you around for you to do something funny, but for me to pay $600 a fucking... Can it come out of some tax thing we have? Do we have any sort of kitty?
Yeah, I think there's a fund. That we could probably dip into.
All right, so even if you did have it, you're not... Just because you had the guy's address doesn't mean that you can get in touch with them successfully. And that's another thing I wanted to talk to you about. I wanted you to go after various people. That bald-headed comic, I'm forgetting his name, who...
Dave Chappell.
Okay.
Yeah.
So whatever happened with that?
He's done that really interesting thing that comedians do these days where they decide to get into like political affiliations. And so the barrier to entry to talking to him has been less than fun, for one thing. And all he wanted to do and respond was talk about gender, and we just wanted to talk about his 90s stand-up special, and I just don't think the message is getting across. Well,
all right, I'll tell you this. I was at a Christmas party this weekend, and people were asking me what I did, and I was saying I was a podcaster, and they said, what's the name of the show? They had no fucking idea as to what I was talking about. They had never even heard of it, let alone have listened to it. So whatever you need to do as the producer, which is why I brought you on board to begin with, I think you need to step up your game and make it happen.
You have a lot of contacts in your Rolodex.
Yeah, I'm not going to mess around with it. Like, I'm going to call John Hamm and say, you want to be in my stupid podcast?
Why not?
Why would I do that? Because I want to make movies
with him. He was in your book, right?
Right, because I got a cut from that. He was in the audio production of my book. I'm not going to say, oh, hey, why don't you come on my podcast? I have a producer who wants you, but he doesn't always know what he's doing or what he wants from others. Guy doesn't have time for that.
I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing.
Really?
But you are like a roulette wheel, Mike. You'll change your mind.
That's who I was from the get-go. When we first met 8 years ago, I told you I'm like an out-of-control merry-go-round where ideas will come flying off me, and you just have to hang on tight. And you may go flying too, but it's worth the ride. Did I not tell you that?
You did. I accept that, but you need to accept that, like, I have to find my balance when you're spinning.
You have to be the plum. And that's not the fruit. That's the PLUMB. That's what carpenters use to get things straight. So be my plum.
Wow. I promise you I will be your plum in 2024.
Fine. What else do you have to go over? I have to get back to something.
Mike, I don't know if any of my notes are going to make you as excited as I thought they were going to be, but I will say that we are averaging a good, solid 2,000 downloads a month, and I think we can get that up to 10,000 in 2024.
All right, fine,
I really do.
Whatever. What are we going to do for the December podcast? Has there been any thought?
Something that really connects with the younger demographics and the divorcees is being let in on the process. So I think if you know I'm recording this call, so I think if we
but you're not going to
kind
run
of put this out for
the whole purpose of this was
they'll love it.
the whole purpose of this was for you to play it back to me to listen to how I sound, what to do, what not to do, and use this for informational purposes. What else
Mike,
do you have on that list?
I know you're.
Are there anyone else that I should be reaching out to, that I should be going after? Should I not be going after? Like my daughter is 14. I would love to have her friend group listen to this show. What can we do to bring in that group?
I think we should bring out every contestant of Dancing with the Stars and do like a long daily episode for like 3 months straight, where we talk about dancing, show business.
Well, she's not into that. She's into Taylor Swift. She's into
sure
HGTV.
They did Taylor Swift night on Dancing with the Stars. Like, we can incorporate all of these things.
Or can you get her?
Taylor?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll probably have to go through Jason Kelsey, who's a podcaster and brothers with Taylor's boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
So I think through the podcast channels, I can make it happen.
Okay. Well, see, there you go.
I got to ask you, though, Mike, are you sure this is about downloads, or are you just trying to, like, impress your daughter? Because we just need to be honest with each other.
But did you hear what I just said? All right, my daughter doesn't listen to podcasts. All her friends do. And she has a ton of friends at school who listen to podcasts and YouTube and other...
Thousands?
No. I mean, 20.
Well,
but you know what?
Are you sure that this is what we need to go towards then?
Yeah, because I'm in my room, door shut, me talking to myself. I would love for her to be able to join in on the fun. And me talking about comedy and me talking about movies that came out in the 80s, that doesn't really interest her. So how are we going to get new listeners if she is not interested, nor people her age? I mean, how many shows can we do on the movie Airplane?
Well, why don't we do an episode based on the Eras Tour? We can see how that works with her friend group. And based on the audience retention level and listenership, we can inform how we're going to do the rest of the episodes of the year. Does that sound okay?
Fine. Whatever happened to my idea for the Meet the Fockers reunion?
I'm actually waiting on an email from Ben Stiller. So
His people.
Yeah. Well, no, directly him. I found out his email. It's a Gmail, so it's pretty simple.
And what did you say?
I said, I represent author Mike Sachs.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a very impressive podcast. We'd love for you to come on.
Mm-hmm.
And then, segue that into a reunion show at an Alamo Draft House with the entire cast of Meet the Fockers.
Right. And what did he say?
Well, he hasn't responded.
He hasn't responded at all.
So, that's what I'm waiting on.
So he hasn't said, like, I'll get back to you, or what's the day?
No, do you think I should send a follow-up?
I would send a follow-up. See, the problem with something
I sent the first one in August, but
definitely send a follow-up.
Know.
The problem with something like this is you need the keystone, and the first person to say yes, then everyone else follows.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I was thinking, and that's kind of what I was thinking with John Hamm too. But I'm
not bothering him. No, I like him too much to bother him with this shit.
Okay, well, I do think Meet the Fockers has wheels. I'll send an email now, but do you want to schedule another meeting maybe sometime next year once we get these episodes out?
Meet the Fockers again.
Okay, we will.
So we
meet them.
Yeah, again. So you're talking about reconnecting in 2024?
Yeah, and we'll put this tape out so that the listeners know that we're
whatever
working
you
hard.
do. This is for us. This is for informational purposes. Let me know what you want for December, because it's already in December, and I'm leaving soon for Christmas vacation. We can put up an older interview, and I can write something really quick. Just let me know about that.
I don't know, man. I think we should let him. You know what? Just let me handle it.
Another question
we'll get through
that I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
The funny sketch I had about the current Palestinian Hamas-Israeli war.
Mike, I'm getting a call. I think this might be Ben Stiller's people.
Oh, you better take that. Okay.
Okay. I'll put this out, and we'll talk again in January.
Okay.